going to find himself getting passed by multiple cars, as I mentioned earlier on. So New York in a very precarious situation, but he often finds himself in these places. Doesn't qualify as well as he races. Only
Up front, they are getting with Lee Aberdeen and Luca Varani, not very far apart at all here. But I just want to see how Alistair Haight deals with Marcello Kessler coming around the old hairpin.
And I would say it's not the best decision they've ever made, just not having done that under the safety car, really.
Yeah, they're taking their pit stop strategies from Ferrari lately or something. What's going on?
In turn one, just too much gas on them, too much feet on the out pedal, and unfortunately he's dropped all the way down the order. But Philip Hammer is out in front by an 8.91 seconds. Ooh, Dan Michael is a wall there, sir. And it definitely doesn't want to be hitting that earlier on as well.
Difficult, the understeer is in the dirty air through that final corner because it's such a long corner and you get dragged off into the grass very easily. He'll have the slipstream down towards the chicane. Peterson was briefly alongside, but that slipstream has saved him and kept him in third.
Yeah, Varani now lost a little bit of time to Aberdeen, about half a second. Peterson is Pike's pushed more and forward up ahead. He's got out of line. It's now Pike could have a go. Werrell, don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin, further down Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly, Miller's still such trouble. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden Miller's back in play.
Moving on to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolute serious racing league. Everybody's a lot of fun. Yeah. And
It's all about the entertainment.
so I hope everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is been enjoying himself watching. And Burger King machines off into the grass a little bit there as they're really bunching up now.
Hello everybody and welcome to Imola for the 5th round of the Tanso Racing Group's GR86 series, the TVG GR86 series here round 5. It's a historic circuit of course, and our first real Grand Prix circuit that we've gone to over the course of this season, and to be honest it's the first Grand Prix circuit quite like this one we're going to go to all season long. We've got a few more to go after this one, or a couple more I should say. Road Atlanta in 1 week's time and Summit Point as well, but none quite like Imola. It's myself, Ian Leary and Bradley Dalton along with you for this round of the championship, as we have been for the last few. And it's taking them, Brad, a long time to get round this circuit, over 2 minutes in length because of the speed of these GR86s. That's no surprise. Wonder what the racing is going to be like though. Maybe the slower speed of these cars will help the racing a little bit at a circuit that can be difficult to overtake on.
Yeah, good evening everybody. It's interesting to see these cars at Imola because this is, as you said, this is the first sort of different style of track that I feel like we've seen the GR86s at. But watching through practice and kind of enjoying the cars going around, I've been enjoying watching everyone go through. We've got a couple minutes left to go here in practice. You can see the cars looping their way through the different sections of the track now, a track that we'll go over. And this is what I've been looking at, that close racing. I've been keeping my eyes on that through all of practice, and everybody seemed to be pretty well. If they're getting in packs, they're staying in packs. But if you're losing out of touch with other drivers, that wasn't proper grammar at all. But I'm not even going to try to correct myself. If you're out of touch with drivers around you, it shows very quickly. But I will say the one thing is lap times are very close, all things considered here.
Yeah, we've got Scott McFall who's a little way out front, but after that, it is quite close. Indeed, a good evening to everyone who's tuned in YouTube. Sean Atkinson already there. He will, of course, stop chatting and start driving soon for the qualifying session. And Tim as well, good evening to you. Let's go through the scores as we get underway for qualifying shortly. It won't surprise you to learn that Scott McFall is leading by a very long way in the pro standing. 89 points is what he's got now over Scott Brown, who's in second. Jack Conley, Rylands, Alan McCain rounding out the top 5. Nilton Carvalho, who you can see third in this session, is down in 9th. He's only been at 3 of the 4 rounds so far. In Pro-Am, we've got the most interesting of the 3 championship fights. It's Andy White, who overtook Peter Duke with his performances 1 week ago at Navarra. He holds just 6 points over him though at the moment. They're both 1 and 2 in this practice session right now. Dan Forster is 40 points adrift. Peter Woodmore is 59 adrift, so a little way behind really, considering the amount of rounds we have remaining in the season. And then it's Terry Atkinson who leads in the AMs. He is 32 points ahead of Tim Walters, who's second. Then Sean Atkinson, who got ahead of Michael Vester at Oschersleben. I said Navarro, which last week, didn't I? It's Oschersleben 1 week ago. Apologies, Navarro 2 weeks ago. And then John Johnston in the 5th position in AM. So there's one real championship fight that I'm really paying close attention to here, and it is for the Pro-Ams here, Brad. It looks like a very, very exciting fight indeed. 6 points after 4 rounds between Andy White and Peter Duke.
Yeah, the Pro-Am Championship battle is going to be what really heats things up by the end of this season here, because as you said, Andy White, Peter Duke, right there neck and neck. It doesn't surprise anyone to see Scott McFall running away, and Scott McFall, one of only 3 pro drivers that have showed up here at Imola today. It's a very Pro-Am and Am heavy session here today. Only 3 pro drivers here, so that'll mix things up quite a bit. But that Andy White, Peter Duke battle, I am just like you. That is really where I'm kind of holding my battle and holding my eyes to, as we see Andy White starting his time around here and getting his way through. Let's actually ride on board for a good little lap here with Andy White.
This is an out lap, of course, onto this qualifying session, but it's a good view as to how they'll go round here today. Blind corner over here, of course, at the left-hander of Piratella. Well, it's not blind quite, because they're not quite going quick enough for it to be quite a surprise to you, but there you go. Third gear, fairly flowing left-hander, and then downhill in towards Acqua Minerale, which is really a big braking zone here. You're turning and braking at the same time, which these cars really hate. So interesting to see how they'll cope with that over the course of the day, and then out up over the hill and in towards the chicane at the top of the hill here. Well, they plunge back down again in towards Ravata. It's such a such an interesting circuit. So many rises and falls on here, of course. I'm interested to find out here just how much importance these drivers are going to put on qualifying. Is it going to be one of those circuits that's really... And as a result, qualifying may be a little less important.
Yeah, I think the racing is going to get very, very interesting. I'm really curious to see how the chicane at the end of Aqua Minerale treats the drivers. I love that we just passed a DRS sign, even though no DRS to be found here in the GR86s. That would be interesting, though, to throw DRS on a GR86. I'm curious to see how things go here with these cars around. I think qualifying is going to be interesting, but I'm just like you. I'm not putting weight on it, but I do think there is going to be some qualifying, woes that we'll see as we go. Drivers still trying to bring their way around and get their way through. We are going to follow Andy White through this full lap here as Scott McFall has started his first flying lap. Scott McFall looking fairly good, but I do want to follow Andy White here, and then we will jump back to Peter Duke. Peter Duke is just slightly behind Andy White here in his lap.
Those two, of course, the top two in the AM standings. They're pretty close together on circuit, though. They're going to be coming across the line almost at the same time. As you can see on the bottom, Scott McFall seems to be the furthest round his lap as things stand, just ahead of Terry Atkinson. That's what that graphic at the bottom there is indicating. They're all going to have personal bests, of course, because it is the first lap of the day for absolutely everybody. So that's why they've all got personal best sectors for the moment. In YouTube, Sean Atkinson telling us that it's going to be a losing touch evening. Suggests to us that maybe he's not feeling brilliant around this circuit, and it's feeling that it could be a bit of a struggle for him here this afternoon. But let's wait and see on that front. He'll be fourth over the line, just behind Terry Atkinson, who he'll be trying to get ahead of course, in this AM session. Down towards the bottom end of the circuit then for the Pro-Am leaders as Scott McFall makes his way out of here and up towards the line. He was the only driver in the 201s. There was nobody even in the 202s in that practice. So he is looking very, very good indeed, is Scott McFall, as he goes over the line now. Does he get into the 01s? I don't think he quite got there, but it looks like it's going to be the benchmark that everyone else is going to have to beat here, and it could be a difficult benchmark to get over as well, although it looks like it maybe didn't count. Terry Atkinson goes fastest initially, followed by Andy White and then Duke. So Andy White wins that one, 6/10 of a second, but I get the feeling everyone's just warming up a bit here, really.
Yeah, and it is going to take some time for drivers to run through. Scott McFall, we saw his lap didn't count there. One of our three pro drivers, Carvalho, now through 0.3 of a second off of Andy White, putting Peter Duke further back in the mix. But you get 3 laps here in qualifying, and these cars, they're not fastest on their first lap. They're not F1 cars, even though we are at Imola. These cars will wind up, and they can run multiple laps, and typically that second or third lap is really the fastest one you see here as we follow around our wonderful points championship leader in the pros, Scott McFall. And let's see if he can get this lap to count.
Yes, I wonder how difficult it's going to be to stay on circuit through here, Imola. It can be one of those places where off-tracks are a factor. Going to be difficult to get a drive-through in the race, of course, as ever. But actually in qualifying, maybe we're going to see one of those qualifying sessions where it's about just staying on circuit and making sure you don't get an off-track, because that's everyone through now. We've only got 12 of the 19 drivers who are in this session setting times that suggest that it is pretty difficult to stay within the bounds of the circuit.
Yeah, and there's certain sections that I think are really where the problem lies, and I think specifically it's Aqua Minerale is really where I think drivers are getting caught out. I could be wrong with that, and the drivers will probably correct me, but you do have to be careful of running through. You've got to make sure you keep wheels on curbs. Andy White is setting a purple 4th sector. Again, Andy White going even faster, might crack the 202s. Scott McFall coming across here. Is this a clean lap? And this is what I would call a banker lap there. A 203 in. Scott McFall, 2022. I'm sorry, up on the top of the tables by 1.2 seconds. But Andy White going faster still, comes across the line and does improve. No, does not improve, actually. So still a few drivers to put in times here.
The only driver to not have improved there in his second lap, although not very many have been over the line yet. Nilson Carvalho now just doing that, does improve, goes up to second place. Peter Duke did so as well, but stays fourth at the moment, so it's White and Duke still second and third, or first and second, I should say, in the Pro-Am standings. Over the line there for Adrian Hadfield, who's currently in 11th position. As who is improving here towards the end?
It looks like Tim Walters is trying to improve here a little bit.
Waiting. Oh, excuse me, I think I've just dropped out there for a second. We're still waiting for 4 lap times here. Still, there's drivers to come over the line, and Jeremy Ullermans has had 2 attempts and has not set a time yet.
Yeah, it shows this track is pretty difficult here and is giving a little bit of a problem through. Tim Walters across, that'll put him in provisional pole for the AM series here as they go across, and I'm sure Tim Walters will be happy with that. Andy White putting in another run. Terry Atkinson is now in pit lane reset. Scott McFall continuing to put in personal best as we continue along, slow in that 4th sector, but is finding a bit more. Sean Atkinson we might need to watch, and if you're wondering which Atkinson is which, last week we made this slight change. You're going to see T Atkinson and S Atkinson. That should give you just a little bit of the difference you need to tell where the 2 Atkinsons are.
This will be last chance for everybody then, as they make their way up towards the line. Scott McFall doesn't really need to improve here, but he's just showing off. He wants to be the only driver in the 201s. In fact, there's nobody in the 202s right now, but we know that he can do a 201, and there he does. A 201.8 from Scott McFall. That should get him the pole position here. Newton Carvalho will be second in Pro. There doesn't seem to be much doubt about that. Sean Atkinson needs a bit of an improvement here if he wants to stay in touch with Terry Atkinson at the front of the AM standings. He goes 14th overall. There as Jeremy Ullermans finally does get a lap in, and he goes into 7th position. Curtis Matthews over the line. I'm not sure he's quite going to improve, but needs half a second to get ahead of Tim Walters, who's down at the back end of this lap at the moment. Can't do it for the moment. Stephen Wild as well needs to improve. Stuart Briley isn't going to. He will stay in 17th position by the looks of things at the moment. There's Tim Walters. It looks like he might not need this improvement to stay on pole in AM.
Yeah, I don't think he does, but he's still going to be looking to improve anyways as they go through. He's one of the last drivers on track. 40 seconds left to go. There's him. Peter Woodmore has finished his lap. Stephen Wild is on the very tail end of a lap here, just ahead of Tim Walters, but I think Walters is going to be pretty solid in this run. I think this is just running through and no improvement at all, but hey, if you're already far enough through the lap, might as well finish it, get the track experience, and Tim Walters setting up a very solid pole position there in the AM class.
It is a good lap and a solid position for him to start in. As we have a look at the overall standings there, a good look at where everybody is. It's mostly sorted as it's supposed to. Pro-Am, then AM, but not quite. Adrian Hadfield is behind the top 3 in the AM standings, so he'll have to work his way through there before he can start earning some more points once this race actually gets underway. So with that, let's go forward to the race. It's 20 minutes, of course, for number 1 here this afternoon. Scott McFall and Newton Carvalho will start from the front together. It's going to be Andy White and Peter Duke, the championship rivals in Pro-Am, going head-to-head in towards the first chicane as well, with Dan Forster and Mark Proctor on row 3. Peter Woodmore and Jeremy Ullermans are on row 4, ahead of Harry Price. And then the AM pole sitter, Tim Walters. It is Curtis Matthews and Terry Atkinson, the top man in the points there in 12th place overall. Adrian Hadfield, Sean Atkinson are on row 7, ahead of Scott Bell and John Johnson, and then Stuart Briley, the final of those to set a time. Alan McCain and Stephen Wild didn't get times in. They'll have a lot of work to do from the back of the field.
Yeah, Lane McCain being in 18th place. The one driver that's really out of place here is McCain, and it's very interesting for me to see him there. I was not expecting to see a pro driver so out of place here with this track, with the smaller field count that we have today set up here in Imola, but that goes to show that nothing's guaranteed, and we'll see if McCain can work his way from 18th up into that inverted top 6 at the end of this heat.
It looks like we're about ready to go then, here at Imola. Round 5 of the TV GTO 86 series here at the Tanso Racing Group is about half a minute away from getting underway. The top 10 are all ready to go, but as you can see, there's some AMs in the background there who are slightly less ready to go. And some primes as well. So they'll get onto the grid and then we'll be going. Curtis Matthews, Sean Atkinson, Scott Bell all need to get themselves onto the grid in those 3 grid spots, and then we will be racing. So it's time for round 5, race 9 of the championship, and Scott McFall has won all 8 races so far. Starting from the front of the field, can he go on and win 9 out of 9 as the lights get on here at Imola? We are underway for the opening race of the day, and it is a decent start for Scott McFall. Less so for Newton Carvalho, who's got Andy White and Peter Duke both coming through. On the inside, the 2 championship rivals here from the Brown field, going head-to-head and door-to-door in towards turn number 1. Down the inside, in towards the first corner goes Andy White, and he does make the place. He's ahead of Peter Duke. It's a great start for the Pro-Am leader.
I was not expecting to see 3 wide so early. That was brave. That was bold. I think Peter Duke knows that Peter Duke needs to be on a mission here as we get things going and the drivers get underway here. Peter Duke is going to be looking very, very feisty. Forrester losing a lot of time there in the background, losing some pace, having a moment, but up in the front, it is going to be our friend Scott McFall running away with it. And back in AM, Curtis Matthews and Tim Walters had a bit of an inverted position. Curtis Matthews currently leading the AM class, moving forward there in that Blue Angels Kennels livery there as we run down towards Aqua Minerale for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthews is probably like the prime battle ahead of him to go away a little bit, really, because it might be just holding him back a little bit and keeping him from pulling away from Walters, which is what he wants to do, of course. The slipstream around him is going to be more of a factor, I should say, than it normally is because of the speed of these cars, and so Scott McFall is not quite able to pull away just for the moment. But we've seen this time and time again this season. We saw it at Oschersleben as well. The slipstream was relatively effective round there. It took him a few laps to pull out the necessary margin, but eventually he did. Looks like that's what's going to happen here too.
Yeah, and we'll continue to watch and see how that margin goes. Right now, the big margins are McFall and White going through. White's pulled 1.1 on Duke. Carvalho is trying to find his way back forward, but I hate to say it, I don't think anyone can bring a challenge to Scott McFall here in this first race. If Scott McFall just does what Scott McFall needs to do and runs away, I think we're going to have a pretty good battle. That second place battle is going to be the one to watch, honestly.
Looks like Alan McCain might have come into pit lane here, which is be a little bit odd for him, but it looks like what happens there for the pro driver. He's making his way down. I wonder whether he jumped at the start maybe and had to come down pit lane. I've got no idea, but there's Andy White, and we've got a car off here. Carvalho's off from the pro class. He was second in qualifying. He's back to pit lane now. It looks like he's got off the road from 4th place overall and second in class.
He has, and here is the replay of exactly what he did from above as we follow him through hard on the brakes and just completely lost traction, and the car decided it didn't want to turn. And I think that was of course, no damage here, but I think that is Nilton Carvalho just deciding, you know what, I'm done. And then this was Jeremy Owens just behind Nilton here. You see Nilton in the foreground there, hard on the brakes, goes off, and what does Jeremy Owens do? Something similar there, and just misses the chicane.
We'll probably get a slowdown for that, even though it is through the grass and gravel, of course. Still just under 17 minutes to go here in the opening race of the day, by the way. Scott McFall leads overall. Andy White is leading in Pro-Am, and what a leading advantage he's got there. Duke is in 3rd place, and this overall, that is, second in class, and this is a big battle. Duke needs to try and hang on to as many points as possible to reduce the amount that Andy White would stretch his leading advantage out by, and at the moment, Duke's got a real job on his hands trying to do that, because Proctor, Woodmore, Forster, Price and Orlemans are all right behind trying to get themselves through.
Yeah, none of these Pro-Am drivers are slouches. Even though they are in the Pro, Dan Forster off in the background and spins around. That was somebody going very wide to avoid. John Johnston is involved in this as well as they came through, and Dan Forster dropping all the way to the back. That might give a little bit of breathing room to Peter Duke. I think instead of like 10 cars behind him now, it really is Proctor and Woodmore that's behind him. What happened there with Dan Forster? Something with him and John Johnston, and this may not actually be related here. This is John Johnston's off that happened just a little bit behind. This is Aqua Minerale. and the car brings it around. What happened to Dan Forster, though? Let's look at this from above. So this is Dan Forster running through, and is it just too much curb? Is this a case of the GR86 just not wanting on the brakes and trying to turn at the same time?
Whoa, and a good avoidance there from someone who had to go off the road there to avoid. That may have been Harry Price in the 51. I believe he's been moved up to Pro-Am in the as far as the standings is concerned, but I can only see him in the Am standings, but he might have been moved up to Pro-Am. I couldn't tell you, to be honest, but there you go. He's 6th place over. Do you have any word on that? Is Harry Price a Pro-Am or an Am?
I will double check myself here because I've got him down as a Pro-Am. So if he is an Am, I do apologize, and I can correct that very quickly. Let me take a peek really quick.
Yeah, we'll leave you to it for the moment while we continue on here. This is what we think is the Am lead anyway. Tim Walters at the head of this one, ahead of Terry Atkinson, who's made a good start. Curtis Matthews, I'm afraid, has fallen down the field here from 11th where he qualified. He was 2nd, of course, in the Am standings as it was running, but now he's way down. Terry Atkinson is now in that 2nd place, losing, of course, some points to Walters if things stay as they are, and is really what Tim Walters needs. He needs to gain points on Terry Atkinson in pretty much all of the rounds remaining here. There aren't very many rounds left, and so Walters needs to gain points wherever he can, and this result right now would gain him a few points.
That it would, and as we look here, I am going to tell you that I believe Harry Price is indeed an Am. It looks like he is misclassified on this layout, so we will correct that here momentarily, but that does change this up a little bit. Walter's battling for 2nd place then with Atkinson, and Price is actually your leader in the Am class here. Peter Woodmore, Mark Proctor are battling out really hard with Peter Duke. Peter Duke is, I mean, I don't know about you, Ewan, but if I am Peter Duke here and this is what I'm looking at behind me, I would be slightly terrified.
A real bit of under pressure here for him. This is a big moment here. He needs to hold on ahead of Proctor and Woodmore. These are the only 2 positions he can realistically lose unless he has a big accident over the course of this race, but nevertheless he needs these points with Andy White winning the race at the moment and currently 5 seconds up the road. There you can see it. There's the corrected leaderboard on the left hand side. Harry Price leading by 3 seconds in Am and certainly showing himself as far as last week was concerned as well, when he went on to take a couple of victories. He's showing himself to be a very fast driver indeed in the Am standings, so we'll keep an eye on him. One other thing to note, top 6 get reversed after this race, don't forget, so 6th place is a big point of conversation, and at the moment Price is holding that too.
Yeah, and it's a very, very good thing to see Price in that 6th place holding on here. Again, apologies to Harry Price there for having you in the wrong class. It looks like that's a carryover from a moment of last week, I believe. For a brief second in the green room, I had him in Pro-Am instead of Am, and it looks like I misclicked a button again, but we've got that sorted out. That is the fun of doing some of this on the fly, and that is the fun of things that happen here. We've had several, and I mean several drivers go off here, and let's pull up the timer as we go. Elaine McCain has had a big off. Curtis Matthews has had an off somewhere in the mix. Plenty of drivers having plenty of moments, and we see Scott Bell and Dan Forster having a little bit of action side by side.
Yeah, this is side-by-side action here between 2 drivers not in the same class, although Jeremy Ullermans is in the same class as Dan Forster, and he's looking to make it 3 wide, looking to pass them both here and go into 11th position. 3 wide over the line. This is something you don't see very often at Imola, but Ullermans goes and takes the initiative. He goes down the inside, and he might well have the place here. It narrows up, though, as they go 3 wide into the first chicane. Oh, goodness, there's contact. Contact, and Bell's off the road. It's never smart to go side by side with people not in your class, and for unrelated reasons, Scott Bell's gone off, and Stephen Well will go through and take a position as a result. The 2 battling for 11th remain side by side. Jeremy Ullermans hangs on eventually ahead of Dan Forster, but that's what happens when you get 3 wide in towards turn 1. It doesn't happen very often, and that's why here at Imola.
Yeah, 3 wide into turn 1. I love this. I love the way these GR86s are racing. I mean, they're putting in some very, very hard action here, and a little bit of contact there sends Scott Bell off. A little bit of a love tap there, sending Scott Bell off the circuit, and a little bit of a connection issue as well, causing Scott Bell to Houdini his way in and out of existence. And that is good battling from these GR86s around Imola. While the laps are long, the fighting is competitive, keeps things moving, and Terry Atkinson is challenging right now for 3rd place in the in the AM class here.
Absolutely. This is the AM battling going on just behind Briley and Atkinson. Sean Atkinson, that is, also fighting it out just a little bit further behind. We've just gone over the halfway point in this race, by the way. Good evening to Chuck Finley, who says in YouTube chat he's just got iRacing and a wheel and pedals, and he's pleased to say that the GR86 sounds very similar to real life. I'm not sure how you know that, but fair play if you do, and you've driven this car in real life, and reporting back to us on how realistic it feels. It is good on iRacing that there are so many cars that are so well replicated in the sim compared to what they're like in real life. This is a great way to, of course, start entry-level racing, especially in iRacing and in real life as well, and it's good to know that the GR86 handles very similar to real life as we go with Jeremy Ullermans and Dan Forster now towards turn number 1. Forster makes his way up the inside for 11th place.
Yeah, one of the things I will say that I like about iRacing is that one of the things they've done well that other sims seem to struggle with is they're not just making the top-end cars that you don't have access to. iRacing has done very well to have the MX-5s, to have the street stocks, to have some of those lower class cars that are more accessible. And the GR86 is one that, if you think about it, you can go to a Toyota dealership in the US. I won't speak for the UK or other countries. I'll say in the US though, and buy a GR86 for a fairly decent price. I drive past them in people's driveways here where I live near the Toyota dealership, and because I'm near a Toyota plant. They are a very accessible car, and if you're looking for a fun car to get into racing and you have the money to spend and the time to spend, and you're looking for something you can daily drive, but you also are looking for something to get a little track action with, this is a good entryway into that. So I like that iRacing has that, and I'm glad to know that they handle very similar, because I like the way the GR86 handles. It's on my radar to buy.
We're not paid by Toyota, but we are complimentary of it. Side by side on the way towards Ravazza, and this is Proctor going round the outside of Duke, past that Peter Duke can't afford to concede, but Mark Proctor makes it work on the outside. Down at turns 17 and 18. That was a great pass there from Proctor. He's on the overall podium now with 4 laps to go, and here comes Woodmore. Now, who is going to be given the slipstream? It looks like Duke is going to get the slipstream, and so we'll hang on to the place. Will he even come back again on the way towards the first chicane? Of course, the Tamburello chicane. Can he do anything here, Duke? No, doesn't look like it. Will he get dived by Woodmore? No, not quite. So they'll stay in the same positions, but a great pass for Proctor, who's now into the top 3.
And I don't think Duke's going to let this one go, though, because Peter Duke, this is a big deal for him for the championship. And side by side they go. Hard on the brakes goes Peter Duke. He's got that inside line. And look at Woodmore following along as well as they go around. That is... wow, that's a very, very good move, but for Proctor, it's very unfortunate, losing 2 for 1. Peter Duke, though, retains that 3rd place, the all-important 3rd place here, because up the road quite a bit is Andy White, and while Andy White's up the road quite a bit, it doesn't change the amount of points he's going to get today, and Peter Duke, if he wants to fight this championship, needs to get all the points he can here today.
It certainly does. And that's why that was so important, as Stuart Atkinson and Stuart Priley go side by side now. That's important for Atkinson in his championship charge, because Terry Atkinson's up the road and he's gaining places as well. Oh no, they're both off. Walters and Atkinson both off, and Terry Atkinson is going to lose some championship leads as a result of this. Priley gets past Walters as well. I'm not sure what happened between the two of them. However, We've got an incident here in the battle for what was 7th place. Now Sean Atkinson moves up into 7th, and look at this. It's Walters versus Brierley on the way up to the top of the hill here, up to the top of the chicane. Walters surely going to go around the outside of the first part, get the inside for the second, but no, he hangs on. Oh, and a spin in the background for Forster, who's been spun around by Orlemans, and Terry Atkinson regains at that top 10 place.
Big moments here. These races and these cars can go from nothing to fireworks very quickly. And that is all that should teach you, is that these races can go 0 to 100 in the snap of a finger. I want to check back up front here because Peter Duke, as they go down the main straight, is under pressure. Slipstream giving away all day to Woodmore and Proctor here as they go down. Hard dive into turn 1. Woodmore looking up the inside. Duke's going to leave plenty of room, but there's sausage curbs that do not help along. And Proctor and Woodmore are actually going to be the ones to swap places here. And that will give them breathing room for a moment. Peter Duke, you ramped that car off of a sausage curb, though.
Just went a little bit deep, but he had to because Woodmore was challenging him on the way towards the first chicane. Proctor was able to take advantage of it in the end, and he flew over the Villeneuve chicane. Now he goes down the inside at Tozer. Goodness me, that would have been aggressive. I know it's a hairpin, but there's not a big straight preceding it, which is normally what you'd need. It's a bit slow out of the corner from Proctor, I'm afraid, and Woodmore gets right up to the back of him as they go over the rise. Woodmore looks up the inside, doesn't go for it. This is an important battle, as we've said time and again. Although I'm slightly interested about the impact that the second race is going to have here, with White directly behind Duke, you'd imagine, in this second race. Surely Duke's going to find it very difficult to hold his championship rival behind him. Andy White looks very quick indeed.
Andy White looks very quick and very comfortable, but Peter Duke looks like that GR86 is about as wide as this circuit. Everybody has had their shot on Peter Duke, just like Proctor here, going to try to dive the long way around, outside to the inside, has to see the corner, and now might actually be under pressure from Woodmore as they go through, but Peter Duke has put that car in all the right places. I think the question for me will be, can Peter Duke do that for 25 minutes? And that, I don't know, is possible here as we have a dive. Proctor to Woodmore. Woodmore up the inside. He's going to spin.
Oh, no!
Oh!
Oh, dear. Woodmore's gone around. Oh, and around goes Proctor. Dear, oh, dear. And in both Ravazza turns, both cars go round. So Woodmore comes out the other side better off. He's fourth. Proctor is now waiting for a gap in the traffic, and he's struggling to find one with the Am battle flying through now. Sean Atkinson, followed by Brierley, then Walters, and then Terry Atkinson has to take avoiding action. Proctor gets on just ahead of Forster, although this is going to be a battle for fourth place in the Pro-Am class, and he's going to lose out. Forster, Orlemans and Hatfield might well get through on Proctor, who was previously on the podium in this class.
Yeah, that is a very defining moment for this race here as Proctor goes and is able to find his way in. Now we've got a big 4-car battle here for fourth place in the Pro-Ams, and Proctor all of a sudden has found himself right in the mix. Not what you want to see. I want to go back and see if we can get a replay of some of these things that have happened here. This is the Terry Atkinson, Ullermans, and Forrester crash that happened early on, and it all starts with Atkinson going through and spinning, and then we collect several other people in the mix of that, joining in, everyone trying to avoid. This is going to be Jeremy Ullermans and Dan Forrester. This is that 4-car battle here into the chicane that we saw, and go through. Bit of a bump, send someone around, and a bump to send somebody else around. And then they all just kind of got stuck.
It's a concertina effect there. Ullermans wasn't quite expecting. Went straight into the back of... I think that was Dan Forster there, who he did let back through again. This was down into the final corners, into Ravazza. Woodmore was too tight on the inside and spun around, and at the very next corner, Proctor went around. I mean, the Proctor one is, the Woodmore one, sorry, is expected because he's tight on the inside, he's in a battle, okay, fair enough. But Proctor there made a completely unforced error.
Yeah, that's painful to watch, I'm not going to lie. And unfortunately, unfortunately for Proctor, Woodmore has been the one to come out with the big advantage here in 4th place overall and is able to just settle in nice and comfortable. Forrester battling with Sean Atkinson as they go down. This is a good battle to watch and keep your eyes on. This big mix of cars outside of the top 10. We're going down with 107 left to go on the clock. Final lap underway here, and Scott McFall is going through the hairpin right now, actually, on his final lap, as Dan Forrester is chasing down Terry Atkinson, looking for a pass. Just at this point for Forrester, it is a matter of just making up points. He's making up overall positions, not class positions. Ullermans is through as well. They're in for 10th, and this is a battle for them of just trying to get as many points as they can.
Yeah, it's about positions for race 2 and picking up those points later on rather than actual points on the road right now. Don't forget, in this series, the points are allocated based on class positions and not overall. So the overall overtakes you see there are purely positioning yourself for race 2, which of course will have the top 6 reversed. And as always, Scott McFall will be starting 6th because he's going to take his 9th race win in just 9 races here in the TVG GR86 series. It's a very, very good start to the season indeed for Scott McFall. 12 seconds is his gap to Andy White, who he's not really worried about keeping behind. Of course, he's got very few pro rivals in this class, or in this race, I should say, this meeting this evening. Nelson Carvalho retired after a spin in the Tamburello chicane earlier on, and Alan McCain had to pit after the opening lap of the race, so his 2 closest class rivals had fallen by the wayside immediately. It's going to be Scott McFall to take another victory. His 9th of the season in just 9 races. Another display of dominance from our champion in waiting as he takes the win and the checkered flag right there. Andy White, 12.3 seconds further behind, is on his way to an important Pro-Am win. Didn't take as many points as maybe he once hoped over Peter Duke, who did well to hold on to 2nd place. But nevertheless, White takes a very important win, with Harry Price further behind in 5th place, taking an important win in AM as well. He's not involved in the championship fight, however, he is a competitive racer, that's for sure, and takes his 3rd win of the season in just his 3rd appearance for Harry Price. That's a very, very good start indeed. Of course, it will be an AM front row because Price finishes in 5th, and Tim Walters recovers to finish 6th and will be on the front row, on pole indeed, for this 2nd race.
Yeah, big recovery drive from a lot of drivers in this race. Stuart Brierley, I want to point out, up 10 places on this run. Stephen Wild back in 15th, made up 4 places from starting last place. Nilton Carvalho, I have to feel for because Nilton Carvalho having a big moment, but Tim Walters doing very well to hold on to 2nd place here in the AMs. Terry Atkinson in 4th, Sean Atkinson in 5th. We always see those 2 through. And then, of course, we have Curtis Matthews, who dropped into 6th overall on the AMs. So plenty of drivers moving around lots of ways, but your timing table on the left is how they finish. But let's bring up the fancy version of the results here.
Yep, there they are. It's Scott McFall leading and winning by 12.5 seconds ahead of Andy White as the session just transitions through. It's Peter Duke, who was another 13 seconds behind, and that could be something to note for the 2nd race for sure. Peter Woodmore managed to finish on the podium in Pro-Am. Head of the podium drivers in AM, Harry Price, Tim Walters and Stuart Brierley. Dan Forster with that relatively late spin finishes 8th in the end, with Terry Atkinson, the AM Championship leader, taking a small hit to those around him. It's Jeremy Ullermans who rounded out the top 10 there ahead of Sean Atkinson. Then Adrian Hadfield, the final of the Pro-Am drivers, who didn't visit pit lane during that race because Mark Proctor did. Curtis Matthews finished 13th overall. Had Stephen Wild over a minute back was John Johnston. Then Alan McCain, who pitted after the opening lap. Mark Proctor, who pitted on the final lap. Scott Bell finished 6 laps down. Nutri Carvalho 9 down, both after retiring during that race. So a decent opener, but I think the 2nd race is going to be very interesting indeed. All 3 classes in the top 6. They'll be reversed, of course, and sent out on their way again for 25 more minutes here this evening.
Yeah, and reversing that top 6 is going to be really fun to watch because it's always a case of when they reverse that top 6, that first lap is just a bit of fireworks. It brings a bit of something different through because then you have the really fast drivers that are up front, you know, the Scott McFalls that are putting in like 12-second gaps to win, have to carve their way through traffic. It's not all about just speed. There's a little bit of a thought process that has to go in that. Some guys have all-out pace, and then there's some guys who are really good at cutting their way through traffic, and you got to be able to do both if you want to win both races here. And of course, Scott McFall has proved time and time again that Scott McFall is the one to beat here, and we'll see if he can do that again here at Imola. That's producing some fireworks.
Chuck has come back and said, by the way, I own one as a daily driver. So there you go. That's why. A GR86, of course, we're talking about. And he's been to a track day with it and says, yes, albeit these are cup cars. He says he feels 100% at home in the sim, and he can feel his own car through the sim, which is good. So there you go. First-hand account of how the GR86 is like it is in real life. That's good to hear. Tim's saying Peter Duke defended well throughout that race, and I think I would agree in that one. Important defence for Peter Duke there of his championship charge as well. Needed to reduce the amount of points lost to Andy White in this event, but I think this second race is even more important for Peter Duke now. He's done the defending, now it's time to go on the offensive, and it's time to try and gain some of those points back on Andy White before he gets too far away.
Yeah, and we don't have that much more left here to the end is the big thing that you have to watch. You know, to the end of this season, we're not too far away, so any points you can save now is going to be very, very essential through to the end. And I do think that for Peter Duke, I think the second race is going to be a little bit better than the first for him. We'll see how the defense goes.
Let's just take a quick moment in this warm-up session to thank the sponsors that make this broadcast possible here on the JPB YouTube channel, starting with TVG, the Vape Guru, of course, who are the title sponsors of this series, Norfolk's largest independent vape store on the high street and online. You can visit them at thevapeguru.co.uk or indeed in their Facebook in our description. Also sponsoring this series at TH Jordan. Visit them at thjordanltd.com, I should say, to visit them. ClarkStJames.com are also sponsors of this series. It can be found in the description below, as can TS Livery Designs. Their Facebook page is linked down below. Conspit.com. Also a sponsor of this series, alongside Techsport Racing and Blue Angel Kennels, both of whom will have their Facebook in the description of this broadcast. A big thanks to all of those who make these broadcasts possible. Just noticed, you've noticed, Brad, down in chat as well. Sean Atkinson says he threw it all away. I'm not entirely sure I really agree. And as you say, there is another 25-minute race ahead of us, but he's got time to recover, and I don't even think he drove badly at all in that opening race.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was a bad drive at all from Sean Atkinson. I mean, he found himself in a decent position. I think the big thing through is, I think drivers hold themselves to a very high standard, and if you as a driver are not meeting your own standard, your own expectations, it can be frustrating. But especially here in this GR86 series, you have to remember that you have the 20 minutes and then you have 25 minutes. This is not a case of, it's over when it's over. It is. The words are failing me. It's not a case that just because you finish somewhere at the end of race one means that's where you're destined to be at. You still have plenty of chances to make it up for race number 2. And the drivers we tend to see do fairly well in race 2. Race 2, again, I always talk about it. That's where the gloves come off. That's where the drivers know that is all she wrote. And it is bring what you can and leave it all on the track at the end of the day.
Absolutely. The checker flag is out and it's time to go racing again for the 25-minute race. Tim Walters and Harry Price will be on the front row for this one, ahead of Peter Woodmore and Peter Duke, Andy White and Scott McFall on row 3. Stuart Briley and Dan Forster just missed out on the reverse grid. They'll be on row 4, ahead of Terry Atkinson and Jeremy Ullermans. It's Sean Atkinson and Adrian Hatfield on row 6, ahead of Curtis Matthews and Stephen Wild. John Johnson and Alan McCann share row 8, ahead of Mark Proctor and Scott Bell. I don't believe Newton Carvalho is going to make the grid, unfortunately, for this one. So 19 drivers on the grid again, and it's the reverse grid race. The top 6 have now been reversed, and there are 25 minutes for us to sort this one out, and for them to either get back to where they were before, or indeed even better, as we're waiting for still a few more drivers to get onto the circuit. And now they are. We're ready to go racing. 25 more minutes here at Imola in the TVG TR86 series at the Tanso Racing Group. It's time to go racing again, and it's a good start there in 5th position from Andy White, who's already looking for positions. In fact, the top 5 have all bunched up here in towards the first chicane. Tim Walters holds the inside from Price alongside. Later on the brakes in the background, Woodmore and Duke going side by side as well, but round the outside, Harry Price takes the overall lead. We've got an overall leader out of the first chicane in race 2.
Yeah, watch out for Woodmore and Duke here. They are not going to let go here early on. We're going to continue with battles hard on the brakes up the inside. And we look, and that is not going to be what we need to see there from White as he tries to go through. Duke back in the background looking. Everybody very feisty early on here through the first time. We've got Woodmore going around Walters here. So we do have a Pro-Am starting to work the way through. And we've had a big to-do here in the background.
Hadfield, Wild and Matthews all held up at least by that down at the back. I'm afraid we'll have a look back at that in a few moments' time, but Harry Price still leads. Walters gets back up to second place ahead of Woodmore. Goodness me, that's close at Piratella. Round the outside he went, and here goes Andy White looking up the inside. Duke just backs off there. He realises this is not his fight, but Andy White gets to the inside. He already gets into the lead. It could be a double win day for Andy White in Pro-Am, and what a disaster that would be for Peter Duke right now, who's trying to work his way forward as well. He's just been passed by Scott McFall, who's now up to 5th place.
Yeah, Peter Duke backing out of that. I do not think that was the correct decision. I really think Peter Duke should have stayed in that, but we all saw that that was not going to go well for whoever, and you see Peter Woodmore getting well out of the way for Scott McFall. Scott McFall now up into 4th, doing Scott McFall style of just running the field up and going forward very quickly here by the end of lap 1. Peter Duke now around Woodmore up into 5th place. We hop on board with Woodmore for just a moment as we come around the first and second Revazza. Down onto the main straight we go. Now, this is where things are going to start to really heat up here. We've got 1 lap down, and this is where drivers are going to start to really put things together. Andy White on the back of Walters down the main straight. We could possibly have an Am or a Pro-Am winner at the end of this race.
Let's see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's still a very long way to go. Here goes Andy White down the inside, and he does get through on Tim Walters now, who's, of course, giving chase to Harry Price out front. Here goes Scott McFall on the outside line as well. He needs to be careful with that. Peter Duke will try and follow through, but it's so difficult for him to because White is getting further and further away. It could be a first and second place finish for those two again. As side by side behind, Jeremy Ullerman's ahead of Peter Woodmore now. Woodmore had a contact. Ullerman goes off and he saves it rather well actually, but he does lose a few places. Woodmore's been dropping back, I'm afraid, ever since he had that big slide on the exit of the Variante Alta on the opening lap of the race. He's now under a lot of pressure again from Forster. Now Peter Duke is going to try and follow Scott McFall through, who's recently got up into 3rd place. Duke looking for 4th here as Walters goes off. Oh dear, there's been an incident there. Well, there's certainly been an incident. Walters is off after contact with Peter Duke at Piratella, or at least on the run up to the top of the hill.
Yeah, we'll get a quick replay of that here in just a moment. And as I say just a moment, we'll do that right now. What happened to Tim Walters here? Tim Walters running side by side with Peter Duke. They're coming down, and how hard was the contact? Well, from that angle, it doesn't look pretty, and thankfully, for those of you who might be new to this GR86 series, damage is off. I want to jump back up really quick before we look at that lap 1 incident, because Scott McFall is right on the back of Harry Price and is about to run his way around here into Revazza.
Yeah, let's have a bit of a run through of the replays a little bit later on, because the lead of the race is on right now. Andy White is now ahead of Harry Price, who's in 2nd position, and looks like he's going good for another victory here. 4 out of 4 maybe in the outclass as Woodmore's off. Woodmore in the background goes for a big spin and a big crash, and it's a big smash again with Jeremy Orlemans, who smashes into him out of Revazza as well, and he's got damage too. Of course, no damage in this series, so their cars will sort of get a second wind, if you like. However, after that crash, it looks like Ullerman's might well be done for the race, as further up front, Price stays ahead of McFall. Behind, Woodmore and Ullerman's have a huge crash, and well, that is a real shame. There wasn't seemingly a lot that Jeremy Ullerman's could have done to avoid that.
Yeah, that's... Ullerman's just unlucky in this race is all I can say. And look at the defense level that Harry Price is putting up right now on Scott McFall. I mean, Scott McFall is actually meeting his challenge right now. Going through, he's going to look around the outside through the hairpin. Can he nail this through? Now it's the run up, and it does look like Scott McFall will get the run with Duke now back on the back as well, because Andy White here in first place is running through. I mean, Aldermans, you have to feel, because he's done nothing wrong this race and has just been, you know, the series of unfortunate events. And I think that wreck there, again, the cars will just be okay, but I think that's a case of Aldermans having to take a second to cool off, because you can now see he's exiting the pits.
Absolutely. Well, he's back out again. I'd imagine the time spent there would have been just the towing time. There is strange things that happen, by the way, when you turn damage off in iRacing. So initially, damage does get applied, but then it sort of pops back into its original form again. I'm sure you will have noticed it once or twice when we've seen incidents so far this season. It's a little bit odd, I've got to say. However, it does mean that when you lose a wheel, I'm not entirely sure that, especially a rear wheel, I'm not entirely sure the wheel pops back on again in damage. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected, but I think some strange things happen if the damage is off, but a wheel pops off in the iRacing session, and that's exactly what happened to Aldermans there. He lost his rear left tyre, and that might have required a tow back to pit lane before he could re-emerge. But anyway, he's back out there again now. As Peter Duke looks to get past Price, he needs to do this because Andy White is up front here, and if he wants to stay in touch with White, he needs to get through right now, because that battle for the lead is about to commence. Duke wants to be a part of it, and there he goes into third place overall.
Yeah, Duke with a very clean run here. Up the inside, gets the pass done cleanly, keep the car on the track, ramp a sausage curb, and continue on along. And yeah, so most other simulators or video games that you play, if you turn off damages, Price is going to look to go back on Duke here. Actually, no, he doesn't get that done, but he's going to stay right behind him. Most other video games, if you turn damage off, just nothing happens. You hit a wall, you just hit a wall, and the car bounces off. iRacing, in that nature, is unique because it applies the damage and then reverses the damage. It doesn't just not do it. So I don't really know how that works through. That is a very good question, and maybe somebody in YouTube chat can answer that, because I am not familiar myself. I've never, ever ran with damage off in iRacing.
I don't remember. Maybe I don't remember doing it personally. I certainly don't remember what happens when damage is off, but you have a crash so big that the wheel comes off. I really don't know what happens there, so we'll have to get some prior warning. This, meanwhile, is a bit of a mess. Terry Atkinson, Peter Woodmore and Alan McCain seem to have all had a crash there down at Tozer. Not entirely sure what at all went on, but there seems to have been an incident. Let's have another look at it. It starts all at the Villeneuve chicane, I'm afraid. Down the inside here. And, this is a spin for somebody else, by the looks of things, is it?
Yeah, that is McCain having a different off to that one. This is
and then he
off
gets,
that we have.
Okay. Then he gets dropped in with Woodmore and Atkinson, and there's contact with Woodmore. So I'm afraid Peter Woodmore there hasn't painted himself in glory, and off the road goes Atkinson, trying to get himself through. So it's not been a great race so far for the AM Championship leader, and not a great event either, as he's languishing down in 14th place. Meanwhile, out front, Scott McFall's trying to get past Andy White, and look at this, they're bump drafting on the front straight. I'm not sure why Scott McFall doesn't just decide to go straight through here, but he clearly thinks that White is worth keeping beside him for the moment, and he pushes him along to a gap of 3 seconds back to Peter Duke.
Yeah, these two are just bumper to bumper down the main straight. They're not letting things go. Meanwhile, you jump back to Mark Proctor, who's just absolutely running with Sean Atkinson. Hard up the inside we go. They leave plenty of room to each other, maybe too much room. Got to be careful there. And is that a slowdown? And it appears that it might be just slightly slowing down there. Doesn't look like a slowdown penalty, but definitely lost time through. There's McFall and White. Finally, they're going through. There's Peter Duke in the background, and then Price and Forrester in the background. So Peter Duke can see this ahead by a few seconds. And I think if you're Peter Duke, you're just hoping these two continue to battle and go side by side and slow each other down. So that way Peter Duke can catch up and try to have a chance at possibly a win himself.
Yeah, let's wait and see. I think Duke is is too far away here. I think White's too quick as well. I think there's going to be a second win here for White and McFall here in their respective classes, though we are not even 10 minutes into this race just yet. Harry Price is still leading in AM, and look at the gap he's got as well. All three class leaders have got quite large leads, but Price has got the biggest, maybe with the exception of McFall, but that's to be expected. Price at the moment is 11.5 seconds ahead of Sean Atkinson, who's in 6th place overall. There is the switch finally happening, by the way, down in towards Ravazza, is it? No, McFall still stays behind.
I think McFall might honestly just be enjoying following someone around and not looking for anything too crazy. I think McFall might just be, saying, I know I can pass, but there's no sense in me starting a battle right now. I'm just going to settle in behind and relax and bide my time, and is doing a very good job of it. Meanwhile, Price and Forster here, they're continuing to go back and forth over this 3rd place.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation as these two make their way over the line. There goes McFall, now finally into the lead. So I'm not sure what the waiting was about for a lap there, but now he decides to strike as Forster now goes through on Harry Price. The concern for Duke here is going to be Forster catching up to him. I feel that's going to be the main concern, but even if it's a 1st and 2nd again for White and Duke, it's still points gained for Andy White. He started the day with 6 points over Peter Duke, and this will be his 4th and 5th wins of the season, if indeed he can hold on right now. And so he would gain in the championship quite substantially, as in the first chicane, Mark Proctor seems to have got off the road and drops down to 8th place.
He dropped back a little bit here. We'll jump back and catch a quick replay of what happened to him as he was running side by side, and I believe what he did was just outbroke himself and hard into that first turn. You've got to get this car slowed down for the first chicane, and sometimes drivers have a harder time of that than others. I do want to go back really quick. That lap 1 crash with Hadfield, Matthews, Wild, and Scott Bell. This big hornet's nest, as I want to call it. Right up the middle we go, and Matthews just got turned. Absolutely nothing Curtis Matthews could do in that. And then just add insult to injury.
I'm not sure who that was trying to stick it down the middle, but it was their fault, because there was never going to be space there, I'm afraid, for another car down the middle, but they tried to anyway, and it caused quite a large crash. Terry Atkinson's back past Stuart Briley, by the way, or at least the battle continues for 14th position. Briley's off. Oh, and Atkinson's off. Now, what has gone on back here? Briley is off into the grabber. I think Atkinson has made contact with Briley here, and he's now up to 14th place, but not without contact. This isn't to Piratella. Briley was trying to let him through by the looks of things here, was he? Pulled to the inside anyway, and then Briley sort of just missed the corner, and Atkinson turned across him. Well, I'm not really sure what that was all about, to be honest, but I think Atkinson's within his rights to carry on, and Briley still can't get himself back going. He goes back to pit lane.
Yeah, that is Brierley's race over. I believe what was happening there is, if I have to guess, I think Brierley was really trying to defend the inside here and just was not able to, and unfortunately lost it in, and then just outbroke himself, because you don't usually take a corner inside line all the way around inside line. And Mark Proctor into the pits here. What is Mark Proctor doing? That was a very...
he spun last lap, of course. Now he's up on the jacks. And exiting... Oh, no, he's back. He's okay. I don't know what's going on there, unfortunately. Stephen Wild gets past John Johnson for 9th place. Both of those two are having good races. And actually, shout out to Curtis Matthews as well. What a recovery from him. We just saw his first lap incident. Join him quarter of an hour later. He's battling for 9th place.
Yeah, and Matthews in a very good position here, continuing to battle in for that P9 place. Looking around here, doing very well. This is this 3-car battle for P9, and Matthews looking for, at minimum, a top 10 recovery here as he goes around the outside in that Blue Angel Kennel liveried car, and is just following along at the moment, and is going to continue along. And I believe that Curtis Matthews will be one to watch here near the end of the race. 11 minutes left to go in this race, Ewan, and I don't really know who to bet on, what to bet on, if to bet on anyone, is things are kind of just mixing up everywhere. The only thing that is a constant right now is Scott McFall up in the front, but even then, he's just barely got a second lead on Andy White.
Yeah, I think Scott McFall's going to be okay. Andy White is putting on a great performance right now, but it's not going to be good enough, I don't think, for an overall win for the first time this season. But we'll wait and see on that front. I think this battle's going to be one of the more interesting ones for the next few minutes. But Curtis Matthews does seem to be the quickest of the three, and as soon as he wakes his way through, it could be curtains for the rest. Here he goes on John Johnston now, who's making good recovery as well from his starting position as well. Johnston was 15th at the start of this race, of course. Was 14th. These two both made their way up nicely, but Matthews has now got himself ahead of Johnston, although John gets back down the inside again. Curtis Matthews has to go round the outside of Ravazza twice. He's going to have to do it round that side for the second part as well, and can't hold on. Meanwhile, Dan Forster gets ahead of Peter Duke. That's on the way in towards turn number 1 here. And that's a big pass as far as the championship's concerned. Peter Duke needed to hang on to that second position in class.
I have a feeling that Peter Duke is not done, though, and he is going to be running through. The big one that I'm also watching is Price right in the background, and Price will be battling for this third place as well. We'll have a 3-car mixed class battle for our podium places overall as we continue on down and around at the moment. Wild, Matthews, and Johnston also continuing their battle in the background here, as it looks like Stephen Wild has had a big off there in the first chicane and has dropped back up front here. Again, Andy White just right in the mix. We're on board with Forrester, who is trying to hold off Peter Duke, and Peter Duke will be looking for some sort of a pass here for the second place in Pro-Am if he can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, up over the curb. You've got to be careful with that kind of stuff, but you do have some off tracks to get away with it, of course. Harry Price right behind, doing 5th overall, looking like he's cruising to another AM victory here. Worth mentioning the championship in the AM class, by the way, with Terry Atkinson so far back at the moment, and a good 5 seconds off Stephen Wild at the moment. And any other positions, it's worth remembering, Tim Walters and Sean Atkinson are both ahead of Terry Atkinson as things stand, and they're gaining points. Curtis Matthews looking for his way through into 9th position at the moment, but yeah, the AM Championship battle getting closer. At the start of the day, it was 32 points. Tim Walters will be a lot closer than that now.
That he will, and for Tim Walters, that is a very, very good place to find himself here. Curtis Matthews with a very cheeky pass here into the chicane, able to cut the chicane just right. Curtis Matthews now with a run down into the first and second Ravazza here, and has that Blue Angel Kennels car up into 9th place. Now he needs to hold on to it for 8 minutes. That's going to be the harder ask here. Around the outside, up the inside will go Johnson. Johnson trying to hold on here, and Curtis Matthews will just cut the nose off. Very, very clean there. Now Curtis Matthews up into 9th place there in class. Good move from Curtis Matthews to get that done.
Should be able to get away now as well, as Johnson pulls out the way of Woodmore, makes his way back into the top 10. Yeah, this will be a bit of recovery drive for Peter Woodmore, I suppose, but it's a bit of a hiding to nothing. He's not going to get any more class positions here with Adrian Hatfield more than 10 seconds ahead of him. Woodmore's just taking overall positions here to no great effect.
Yeah, and, you know, I think it is a little bit of just a sort of mental game at that point for Peter Woodmore, you know, just running through, enjoying the challenge of racing, enjoying being around other drivers and getting to pass and getting challenged. You know, you could just sit back and kind of cruise this to the end, but what's the fun in that? I mean, unless you're, you know, our leader here, Scott McFall, who we need to check in with as he goes through the chicane after Aqua Minerale and is just continuing to cruise through. He's opened up the gap to Andy White by 3.7 seconds and counting as they go through. And then further back, of course, is this Dan Forrester, Peter Duke, and Price battle that is continuing to close up here. 6.5 minutes almost to go. And these guys are not done yet.
Yeah, Woodmore goes through, and so that's a fairly standard pass for that position. So the big battles to watch here in the final 4 laps of the race, which is what we're into now, with Scott McFall going over the line with just less than 8 minutes to go. There you go, starts lap 10, and so 4 more to go. Duke and Forster, that's a big one to watch here. Peter Duke needs this position, of course, but how is he going to get it as he works his way up on the front straight here, on the back of Forster? Closing very quickly here for 3rd position, but he's not close enough. And now we'll just begin to think about how he's going to execute this move, really, because he knows it's not going to happen all in one go. He's got to work this out over the course of a few laps, try work his way through, and on board we go as he tries to do just that.
Yeah, and you'll watch here, Peter Duke, he'll run through. He's got a little bit of slipstream. Oh, that was a very aggressive decision last second. It wasn't going to work ever, but Peter Duke, I feel a little bit of the desperation from Duke here as he's still going to try to dive up the inside, still looking for this pass here on Forster. Again, he's not going to catch White at all, but this is to keep the championship a little bit more mathematically doable, a little bit more alive. And you see Price in the background flashing the headlights. I think Price knows that this is what we're watching and probably is just kind of saying, hey, Mom, on the broadcast. Just a little wave hello there in the background from Price. As we continue along here, Forster and Duke is gonna get desperate here over these last couple of laps, but what Peter Duke cannot afford is to make a mistake and just drop down the order.
Absolutely, that is very true. Although he's got to make a very big mistake to drop any positions here, both of these two, as things stand. Curtis Matthews seems to be out the race now. I'm not sure why. So obviously seeing the incident for Stuart Briley. We know Newton Carvalho didn't start this race. Scott Bell seems to be out the race as well as Mark Proctor. But yeah, Matthews is the latest one out of the race. And so we'll have 5 retirements from this race, which is quite a high number for the race. Let's have a look what happened down into Ravatsa.
Yeah, and this is Curtis Matthews going through hard on the brakes, and the car goes, snaps right, comes together, and then just tapped to the wall. And it looks like at that point, Curtis Matthews just called it, unfortunately.
Yep. He says, I've had enough, and so has exited. So this is the last remaining battle on the circuit now, unless Terry Atkinson can catch up to Stephen Wild, which could be pretty important for the AM battle. 3 laps to go, 3 laps for Peter Duke to work his way through, and much like what we saw last lap, I'm not sure Duke is getting close enough in the right areas to really give Forster a hard time here for 3rd place.
I don't think he is at all here as we continue along. 3 minutes, 45 seconds to go. Roughly 2 laps left to go here in this race, Ewan. I believe, if I'm doing my math correct, as we watch these cars fly through. Gap 0.4 of a second for Peter Duke. We'll jump back on board again. Is he going to try a late dive into the hairpin? He is not, but we are going to follow him through and continue along. He got a good run out of the hairpin here. You see he's very, very high on the RPMs before he shifts, which is what I would expect out of these cars. He peaks a little to the left, a little bit of a run, and he brakes a little bit earlier. So he's being smart here and not just trying to send it. I think Peter Duke is trying to pick where he goes. It's just a matter of his options are very limited here on this Imola circuit, but they're a lot more open than they are in other cars around Imola.
Absolutely. 2 laps to go when they get to the line, by the way. These guys are just around 1/4 of a minute off of Scott McFall, who still leads this race. Duke just takes a little bit more curve there at Variante Alta, a little bit wider from Forster as well. Should be a better run from Duke. Now it's these next 2 corners that are really important. Ravatsa 2, Duke has to nail so he can have it going towards the Tamburello chicane.
Yeah, and this is going to be the big moment. Hard on the brakes, they both go. Dan Forrester through. Dan Forrester, little wiggle over the curb. He gets a little loose, but the GR86 is a car that can handle that. And it is something that you see the higher tier drivers, higher I rating drivers tend to get away with. They'll ramp the curb a lot more. We've got slipstream now coming in effect for Peter Duke. Down the main straight they go. They come around. We hop on board with Forrester. You can see the run. Peter Duke closing this gap even more, though. He's going to peek outside to make this pass into turn 1. Hard on the brakes they go, and side by side they are. And just shutting the door is Dan Forrester, but he gets a big wiggle there.
Yeah, I wonder where there was contact, and now Duke can take advantage of that huge slide for Forster. Here he goes on the outside in towards Villeneuve. He's got to hold it round there for the first left-hander so he can dive down the inside at the right-hander coming up in a few moments' time, but no, he can't quite do the first part, and so he's not alongside for the braking zone, and Forster hangs on. I think Duke needs to be a little bit braver there, but after contact in the first corner, he didn't want to risk any more in the Villeneuve chicane.
Peter Duke is a very smart driver, but he's very safe. And I think sometimes that gives Peter Duke the disadvantage in situations like that, where he needs to just put the elbows out, be a little more aggressive, be a little more brave, as you said, Ewan. And sometimes I think Peter Duke just backs out of things a little too soon and a little too quickly than what he should do. So I think Peter Duke could have had that position, unfortunately has not. And something has happened to Peter Woodmore, speaking of the Peters. And now Peter Woodmore, it appears, is out. We will have 13 finishers to this race, with one of them being Scott McFall, who is currently going through the second Ravazza, about to cross the line with 30 seconds left, and I believe one more lap will come down after this.
It will be a 13-lap race, indeed, as expected. Scott McFall will go over the line one more time and take the lead one more time. Peter Duke then has got one more chance into Tamburello, and he's not close enough right now at all to be making any of those kind of moves. And there it is, out of Ravazza. He's not close enough, and the best overtaking chance on the lap is going to pass him by on this last lap.
I think Peter Duke has lost his opportunity to get this pass done. He's entirely too far back. You saw last lap, he was right on the rear bumper of Forrester as they ran through. I think Peter Duke is just not going to have the run, not going to have the opportunity, but could possibly have a moment here. We'll see hard on the brakes if Duke can nail this for no!
Ooh, off and a spin. You could see how hard he was trying. Peter Duke now has finally lost the chance to go through. I think that was just a slide on his own, but you could absolutely see how hard he was trying there. He gave it everything. In the end, he's come up with nothing.
He had to try, though. That is the thing. Peter Duke had to try to get something done through that first chicane. Through the second chicane here, into the hairpin, Peter Duke had to do something to make a move, and unfortunately, it has cost him, and it could cost him a place here in the overall standings, as Price is now right on the back, and if Peter Duke cannot hold Price off for a moment, that could spell absolute disaster for him, and really, it's gonna prove problematic for Duke, because this man right here, Andy White, this driver, is very, very quick and is going to get a little bit more breathing room in the championship standings as we go into the final races of this season.
Certainly is. Scott McFall has already got plenty of breathing room at the top of the pro standings. Coming into today, he had 89 points over Scott Brown, who was second. Today, at the end of today, he's going to have more than 100 points over the rest of the field, and he's going to be homing in with just 2 rounds to go on sealing this championship early. Scott McFall has been absolutely dominant this season, and here he is again, making his way out of the final corner for the 10th time as the leader of the race, and for the 10th time, he's going to come over the line as the leader as well. Scott McFall wins race 2 in Imola to continue his 100% record into double figures now. 10 races down and 10 wins for Scott McFall. Andy White now brings his success rate to 50%. A 5th win of the season for him, and an extension of his championship lead over Peter Duke, who in the end will only just beat the AM winner in this one, getting ahead of Walters, who they shared the front row together. Harry Price wins his 4th race in just his 4th appearance in the TVG GR86 series, and he is putting his mark on the end of the season very, very nicely indeed. Ahead of Sean Atkinson and Tim Walters, both of whom will gain on Terry Atkinson, who loses points in that championship lead.
Yeah, this is a race that is very much gonna bring some big implications in the championship standings, and I can't wait to see the final standings release out after this round and just see how things mix up. But there are some big shakeups and some big storylines that are going to be coming out of this. I think one of the big ones is, mathematically, Scott McFall could possibly have this championship sealed up after today. I'm going to wait for some sort of official confirmation on that, but just with my very quick math before the race today, I think Scott McFall is unbeatable, and the question will be, will Scott McFall go for the perfect season?
Absolutely. We'll see if it's possible for him to have a perfect season. It would be remarkable if he did, but you never know. It's entirely possible at this stage as Jeremy Ullermans makes his way to the end of the races. His first appearance in the championship. I think he's made a decent show of himself, but unfortunate that this crash in the second race.
Yeah, for a first run out, Jerry Ullermans can be very happy with the appearance. Again, just some unfortunate moments that have happened through this race, but I think Ullermans would have been a bit higher up otherwise and would have been fighting a bit more in that upper midfield, but unfortunately, taken out by things beyond his control. But, that's racing sometimes. You have those moments. and you just kind of have to take it on the chin and go forward. The good news is this isn't the last race for this series. There's plenty more to go, and we will bring up our final results now, Mr. O'Leary.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at them. Scott McFall wins by 10 seconds in the end, ahead of Andy White, who extends his championship lead in Pro-Am as he beats Dan Forster and Peter Duke to the line. It is Harry Price who wins in the Am standings, ahead of Adrian Hatfield, who was sixth. Sean Atkinson and Tim Walters are on the Am podium, ahead of John Johnston and Stephen Weld. Alan McCain, the second in Pro class, actually, 11th place for him. Terry Atkinson takes a hit in points and finishes 12th overall, ahead of Jeremy Ullerman's the final finisher of today's race. Peter Woodmore finished 2 laps down. Curtis Matthews was 5 down, Scott Bell 7 down, Stuart Briley and Mark Proctor were both 8 laps down, with Newton Carvalho not starting the second race. Well, we didn't get a chance to interview anyone last week at Oschersleben because everyone was a bit slow, but it's good that we've got drivers in the waiting room this time round. So let's bring in Harry Price first of all to chat to after that. Welcome in, Harry. Good to have you with us, and congratulations on a couple more Am victories here tonight at the Imola circuit. How are we feeling around this circuit going into these races, and how have you been in these first couple of rounds, and how have you viewed the series, because it's been quite the start you've been able to make?
It's been good. That first race, I was a bit cautious of the fuel. I had to drop off a lot. Unfortunate for Terry and Sean. I don't know what much to say, really. I was nervous at the start, being on the front row, but it was a good race. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Certainly was. I mean, what are your expectations for the remainder of the season now that you've sort of joined halfway through, if you like? You can't really do anything as far as the overall points are concerned, but you can very much get involved in races. What's your sort of aim for the remainder of the season?
Probably just keep it on track, to be fair. I don't want to get in anyone's way, the other classes and such. Just enjoy the close battles. Everyone's really good in this community, and that's it, really. Have a good time.
Well, that's what we're all here for. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Baz Cutting. He should get in the GRs.
Seen him in YouTube. In YouTube, chatting along. I'm sure supporting you. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there you go. Congratulations on winning a couple of races tonight, Harry, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Harry Price there, the winner twice tonight in the races. Tim Walters finishes in second place in that second race, and we can chat to him as well now. Tim, welcome. Good to have you with us. A good day for you overall as far as the points are concerned. You started 32 behind Terry Atkinson. You gained some at Oschersleben. You gained 11 at Oschersleben. You've gained a few more here at Imola as well. How are you feeling after those two races?
Excellent. What did I finish in the feature?
I believe second place in class.
Second in Am. Wow. Okay, that's amazing.
Third. Sorry.
Third. Okay. Okay. Still, because I mean, you guys know better than I do, but I think on the second lap, predictably, I was being swamped because I started on pole, which was nerve-wracking. I was being swamped by the much faster guys, and one of them bumped me. I mean, he apologized. I don't know if it was totally his fault or mutual mistake, but then I was down to like 14th or something, I think. And then other guys fell off the road, and I got back up to 8th, I think, overall, and third in class. So yeah, not bad.
It's a good evening for you in terms of points as well, as I say, gaining on Terry Atkinson. Do you still think you can catch Terry before the end of the season? There's still 2 rounds to go, 4 races, of course. You need to catch him. Do you believe it's possible?
I don't know. I mean, we're pretty evenly matched. I mean, he's usually a little bit faster than me. And it looks like I'm almost certainly going to have to miss next week at Road Atlanta, which is too bad because I love that track. I've been driving it all week long, kind of neglecting to practice at Imola. But I almost certainly can't make it next Sunday. And Summit Point is also kind of up for grabs, and that means I'll miss 2 races. So I'll have 2 fewer races than Terry does. Then I certainly don't have a chance.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll be able to see you again at some point throughout this season. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Just everybody in general. I don't know what the overall nature of the race was today, but it was always very clean for me. I kind of collected a guy when I was sliding in the first race, but I was just control, basically. But it seemed like I didn't have any issues with anybody really, driving standards wise. So it was a great race as usual.
I would agree. Congratulations on podium in race 2 and I believe race 1 here tonight, Tim. And thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
All right. Take care, John.
Thanks very much. Tim Waters there in third place in race 2 tonight. A driver who's finished first in both races is Andy White, who can also join us now. A Pro-Am driver, of course. Welcome in, Andy. Good to have you with us again. 2 second places for yourself. 2 wins, though, in your class. That's a big step forward in this championship as you take some points over Peter Duke here tonight. How are you feeling after those races?
Yeah, it was a good race. Good race overall. A little bit scrappy on my part. I was overdriving the car a little bit, especially in the second race, trying to keep up with Scott and have a little battle with him at the point. But yeah, overall, really pleased.
What about the rest of the season now? You'll be ahead of Peter Duke now by double figures points for the first time in a little while. Do you think you can win this championship and just finish ahead of him by the end?
Well, there's still 2 races left, and it's going to be tough because Peter's usually quick, and just take every race as it comes and try and maximise the points.
Certainly will. You've got 20. There you are for your information over Peter into the next 2 rounds. So we'll see how that goes. Congratulations on winning twice tonight, there, Andy, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Thank you very much for the great broadcast as always.
Thanks very much. Andy White there, winner of 2 races tonight here at Imola in Pro-Am. We're going to stay in Pro-Am as we are also joined by Dan Forster, who finished second in that second race. Congratulations, Dan, and thanks for coming to chat to us. It was quite a battle between yourself and Peter in the final laps there. He, of course, did a half spin on the final lap, but that didn't mean you didn't have to do any defending during that race. You were certainly looking over your shoulder at times and having to throw some defensive shapes. How was that second race in particular?
It was great, yeah. It was a good battle with Peter. I was just, there was a couple of times when we had runs on each other because of that. The draft that you get on that straight means that you're back in contention again as soon as you try and break free. But we had really good fun race. It was good and clean. I don't know what happened to him on the last lap. I haven't seen the replay yet, but something happened, and thankfully the pressure was off just for that last lap. So. Yeah, it was good. I had a nightmare first race, but managed to, I think, bring it back in the second race. Hopefully there was no incidents that you guys were looking at going, oh, what was he playing at there? But it was good fun.
No, don't think so. I think on that last lap he was just pushing so hard that he just spun on his own, to be honest with you. Don't think it was anything to do with you. So there you go. I mean, looking forward to these final couple of rounds. You are 57 points behind Andy White in the championship. Is that sort of a done deal for you now? You're not focusing on the championship anymore and trying to catch the leaders, or is that still a little bit in your mind in these final 2 rounds?
Well, you always go in to try and score as many points as you can. I've had some unlucky races where the 2 races per night. I've usually done reasonably well at one race and then badly at the second, or badly in the first and then well in the second. So I think it just goes to show that if you can get the points on the board consistently, you don't have to be winning, but you do still have to put the points on the board. And I haven't been doing that as much as them guys. So. I'll still turn up and try and win as many points as I can, but Andy's doing well with the points, and so is Peter. So I've got my work cut out for me. I don't think I'm going to be winning, but I'll still turn up and give it all the best effort I can.
Absolutely. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Just thanks to anyone who's watching, whether it be wife or friends, and thanks to Tanso Racing Group and everybody else, and you guys for broadcasting. It's keeping it fun every week.
Thanks very much for joining us, Dan. Congratulations on second place in race 2 tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Yeah, thanks. See you next week.
Thanks very much. Dan Forster there in second place in race 2 here tonight. Well, with that, Brad, we're just about done here tonight. Imola provided some good racing there. I'm always quite sceptical about Imola because it's not one of my favourite circuits in the world. I just don't think it races very well. But actually, we got some great racing here tonight over the two races.
Yeah, Imola is always a track that can be hit or miss. And I know, in particular, I'm thinking of Formula One because that's one of the series you really see at this track a lot that just produces boring racing. But I'll tell you, if you get anything other than an open wheel car here at Imola, it's very good racing. And surprisingly, the less power, the closer the racing, and the GR86 just proved that tonight. Very, very close competitive battles, lots of good action all the way up and down the field. And I mean, Tanso TVG GR86 is showing off yet again.
They certainly were. The championship standings are as follows now after that. It's a great thing in this series that they're done so quickly, actually, after the broadcast. Scott McFall now holds 152 points over Alan McCain in the championship, so he's as good as champion there in the pro field. Andy White, as I said to him at the time, is 20 points ahead of Peter Duke in the Pro-Ams. And Terry Atkinson did take a little bit of a hit in points. He lost 14 to Tim Walters. Now he holds 18 in the standings, with Sean Atkinson 49 behind after gaining 9 here tonight. So that's how we stand in the championships going forward. Make sure you join us again in 1 week's time. We'll be going racing at Road Atlanta once again for 2 more races. So I look forward to seeing you then. But for now, from myself, Ian Leary and Bradley Dalton alongside me, we'll see you in a week's time at Road Atlanta. Goodbye for now.